Hi everyone. I'm sorry I'm not able to make it to your data team meeting today, but I did want to show you some work on the 6th grade ELA curriculum website that occurred over the weekend. And so you can check that out, and then also going over how to grade a standards-based uh, reading test in Mastery Connect. So those are a couple of things that I want to cover with you. First of all, if you'll notice, if you go to the BSD curriculum website, and once you're in there, if you click on 6th grade ELA, you will notice that the curriculum pacing map looks a bit different. Quarter 1 is not completely revamped yet, but your colleagues started working on quarter 2. And specifically what I want to point out is what's going on with the quarter 2 reading pre-test and answer key. I have changed the answer key just a little bit from what it originally looked like to reflect the Mastery Connect grading. So I wanted to pull that up and show you so that you can print this out as you're grading, and it will kind of help with the process. So this is the scoring guide for 6.2 ELA. If you look at it, you'll notice that the letter B is the correct answer, and that the most that the student will get for that is 3 points. So in a moment, when I show you what that looks like on Mastery Connect, you'll be able to just click B, and then that student gets 3 points when you're grading. On number 2, you'll notice that that answer has right here a score B for 3 points, a C for 2 points, and a D for 1 point. An E would score a 0. There is not the option for an A because it is not a 4-level question for Mastery Connect, so that's not an option on this one. However, you'll notice on 3 there is the option for the A, and the A is a 4, the B is a 3, a C is a 2. And I know this may not make sense right at this moment, but hopefully it will when we look at what it appears when you're scoring in Mastery Connect. So if I scroll on down, again, we have a few multiple choices that are just worth the 3 points, and some short answer that only have the option of getting a 3, and then a longer answer response that does have the possibility of getting a 4. So that's what all of this means, and Ms. Jarvis can help edit this, as well as Julie and Ms. Prem. They have all the editing rights to come in here and change this if this is not the format that you want. Now let's look at Mastery Connect, and I'll show you how you will use this information to grade that 6th grade assessment. So in Mastery Connect, you will go in to your grade book, and I want to specifically look at Abby Beatsma. I will go in as her, so we can kind of see how this will look from your end. So in Abby's trackers, we see she has 2 trackers here. I'm going to go ahead, and the first step that you will need to do if you haven't done this is sync with the map. And so when you do this, you will go to the orange button, go to sync with map, and now we have this class synced with the map. I'm going to go to her other class, Ms. Caldwell's, and I'm going to sync with the map. And this is important. I just want to point out, you see the RL, she only has 1 assessment there for 6.2. Watch what happens when I sync with the map. You'll notice that now there's 2 assessments for that standard. You'll also notice that there's a new gray area. Well, this is what happens when there's a multi standard assessment, which the 6.2 is. It's a 6.2 RI and a 6.2 RL. So since they're both there, you'll see the gray category. So a score will populate here as well as individually in each of the tabs for RL 6.2 and RI 6.2. Then she will go to that assessment that we added. She can go to it here in the gray or here in the under the standard in the blue, if it's as long as it's the right standard, so RL 6.2. I'll click Assess. Okay, and this is important because you'll notice that you have a little blue box up here. Some of you will have this and some of you will not, and that just means that there were changes made to an assessment. So you can always click here. You should click here and then make those updates. And I'm sure that this one is the one that I updated the scoring guide for, so I know for sure this is one that needs to change. However, some of the other ones down here I'm not sure about, so I'm not going to bother those. But I'm going to update them in the tracker, and it gives both of her trackers, and then I'm going to click Update Selected, so that now any of the updates that have been made, like corrections to scoring guides and such, will all carry over into Abby's trackers. So now she's ready to go in and back to that point where we were grading. So we'll go into her class again and go back to that standard. Again, I can be under RL 6.2 or RI 6.2 or that gray band area. It does not matter which area I'm in. Once I'm in here, I want to go to the orange hamburger button is what we call it, and look to see okay, before going to the orange hamburger button, we actually need to click on the assessment so that we can be at the screen where the orange hamburger button will show us what we need to see. Okay, so here we go. So here, if I click on the orange hamburger button, now I can see this option of performance grader. If I click on that, that will give me an option to see my students' names, and I can put in their score for their test. So it's hard to see here, but there's some students' names, and so the white right here is showing that I'm ready to grade this student's test. So for question 1, where we went through and we said the only answer that's correct is B, and she gets 3 points for getting that. If I click on that, that will give the 3 points. If I click on something else that she selected for her answer, she will get 0 points. However, when I get down here to the questions where she actually has to write out answers, I tried to keep it as simple as possible and make the A a 4, a B a 3, a C a 2, a D a 1, and then there's an option of an E for 0, so that you can just quickly enter in all your scores here on this page. I did have the opportunity to work with Ms. Friend and Ms. Jarvis and Ms. Prem just briefly on this, so they may be able to help you as well if you have questions on that. But this is where you will put in your data for those kiddos. Now I'm going to go back out of this, and it will not actually. So now I'm going to go in as Miss Friend because she actually did do a sample grading of one of her kiddos, and so I'm going to click in her class. And when we get in there, we're going to look at what it looks like when you score one of those multi-standards in Mastery Connect. So here I am in hers. Hers has already been updated, so she has the 2 assessments here under RL 6.2. And if I scroll over, I will notice that there is this gray area for the multi-standards test on 6.2, and you'll notice it actually gives that student the grade 23 out of 30 and puts it as a 77%. However, that column we're going to kind of ignore. It will populate the 6.2 RI and the 6.2 RL in the categories as well. So if we look right next door, we've got RI 6.2. If I look at the assessments for that, I will see the scores that she entered for her when we were practicing. So right here, you'll see that this student has a 14, and then that score is showing up now as the more recent score from the STAR 360 as a basic score. None of the other students have been scored yet, but when she scores them, it'll populate there. So that way, when you have a multi-standard test, it's going to show up in every single standard, the points so you don't have to enter them 3 or 4 times. You'll notice up here it also has a click for update. So I'm going to go ahead and click there and show you how to do that update again. Again, I know that this one was updated with the correct answers on the scoring guide, so I'm just going to update that in her tracker just to make sure that it's reflecting the most recent data. In fact, we'll go back and look at her data for that student and see if it changed it any. So if I go back to her tracker and her gradebook, and go to that grade category, it didn't. She's still at 77%, that student. And again, this percentage is just there with all the standards that are in the multi-standard as an average. However, the standards pulled out by each question are put individually in whichever standard category that they fall into. And I will be happy to help anybody that has questions with this. I just kind of wanted you guys to have something, since I wasn't going to be there, to look at and to kind of practice this, and so that you could score that assessment. And obviously the scoring guide can be updated and revamped so it's easier for you to use. We kind of threw it together before the teachers understood that they were going to be using this type of grading for those assessments. So any feedback on how to change that to make it nicer and easier for you to use, we welcome.